Who knows if she would fall for his trap after eating these things? What if there were things she shouldn't eat mixed in? She had seen enough of the plot in palace dramas where children were poisoned. Richard noticed her abnormal behavior. "Why aren't you eating?" he asked. I'm not hungry. "I'll go to the company first," she replied, taking 2 steps back and walking out directly. Richard threw his chopsticks on the table with a clatter. "Sir." Elijah looked very anxious. "What's wrong with the young lady?" Richard sneered. "Is she afraid that I'll poison her? Does she think of me that way?" Elijah cleared his throat, realizing that he had come across as a bit harsh earlier. Seeing the expression on his face, Richard looked up and asked, "What do you mean?" Elijah said, "Girls are timid, let alone a young lady like her." Richard pursed his lips but didn't say anything. Kira arrived at the company quickly. The company had obviously undergone a transformation. As soon as she entered, Yesenia came over and said, "Kira, the company has a new boss. President Gray seems to have been fired, and we have a new President Jenkins who seems very nice." Kira already knew that the company had been acquired by Grayson and that there would be a major shakeup in the upper management. "Isn't that a good thing?" Kira said. Yesenia nodded eagerly. Yes, I'm so happy. Holly has also left. I heard that it was publicly announced that all the designs done in her name were actually done by other designers. Without Fang's support, let's see how she handles it." Yesenia looked delighted, and her mood rubbed off on Kira, making her relax a little. "Hello everyone. Today is our team's first meeting. I am Lu Yanming, the new manager of the company. I hope that with everyone's hard work, Qingyu's future will be better." Lu Yanming spoke from the back and looked up. "Which one is Kira?" Kira stood up when she was called out. "President Jenkins, I am Kira." He looked her up and down and said, "You will be in charge of the Huanyu project this time. Remember to do a good job." "Yes, I will work hard." Kira nodded quickly. After everyone dispersed, someone looked over at Kira and snorted. "Just a newcomer, even if Ms. Fang left, the opportunity should be given to everyone." What? Was it given directly to her? They had thought that after Holly left, everyone would have a chance, but President Jenkins came and gave the project directly to Kira, which naturally made many people unhappy. Yesenia raised her head in disagreement. "What do you mean? This was not President Jenkins' decision. The people from Huanyu said they liked Kira's design. President Jenkins gave it to her for the sake of the company. Isn't that right?" Someone stood up and said sarcastically, "Yes, Kira must be really talented. Who else could have made connections with Huanyu? It's because she's pretty? Yesenia, you should learn from her. She's a university graduate and can already handle projects on her own. You're still clinging to others. What do you mean by that?" Yesenia was furious. Kira pulled her aside. "Forget it. The company just changed its president, and everyone is a bit agitated." Kira told Heidi that she had already started working. Heidi asked, "What about the child?" "Her grandmother is taking care of her. I just need to be careful of Richard's tricks. He won't dare to blatantly take me to get an abortion again." Heidi was still worried, but Kira said, "Let's put that aside for now. Grayson bought the company this time and it allowed me to come back to work. I should thank him by treating him to a meal." When Heidi heard this, she quickly asked, "Are you going to invite Grayson to dinner? Can I come too?" Although Kira knew that she wanted to come along because of her boyfriend Felix, she still agreed. After sitting down, Heidi messaged Grayson and invited him to dinner. Grayson agreed and they decided to go to a Japanese restaurant that Heidi and Kira already liked. When they met up, Heidi cautiously asked Kira if she could eat certain things since she was pregnant. Kira laughed and assured her that she had already checked and it was fine. Heidi then joked about Kira becoming a part of the Duncan family if her child became the heir. However, Kira was just happy to have a healthy pregnancy. As they were talking, Grayson walked in with Richard, which surprised everyone. Richard glared at Kira when she tried to hide behind Heidi. Grayson tried to diffuse the tension by inviting Richard to join them for dinner, but Heidi was not happy about it. Richard's face tightened. Kira was worried that Heidi's mouth would offend someone, so she quickly lowered her head and pulled her inside. "Let's go in first and talk about it." After they were seated, Heidi still wanted to speak and Kira quickly said, "You finally made an appointment with Grayson. If you have anything to say, say it now." Only then did Heidi remember her purpose for coming. She took a sip of water and quickly said, "Teacher Larson, you met my boyfriend last time. He has written a paper recently and is preparing to apply for your graduate program. So, he wanted Teacher Larson to take a look at his paper." Grayson looked over and said, "What paper? Let me see it." "Okay, I'll send it to you." After Heidi sent it to him, he immediately opened and scanned it. Heidi looked at him expectantly, her eyes shining as she waited for his response. Grayson frowned and looked up, awkwardly but politely smiling. "I think it's just average. Forgive me for being blunt, but he might as well apply to the neighboring school, Xiaomei. Their requirements are lower than those of the Central Academy of Fine Arts. There are 2 art schools here. The Central Academy of Fine Arts is one of the top art schools in the country, while the neighboring Balin Academy of Fine Arts, commonly known as Xiaomei, is not even ranked." Heidi looked at his overly frank face, her face turning black as she slapped the table directly. "You must not have read it properly. How could it be just average? I think it's written very well. I have polished it, and the research topic and narrative direction are unique in the country." Grayson leisurely took a sip of the barley tea on the table. "Well, since he's your boyfriend, it's natural that you like it. However, I also met him last time and I think he has a bit of brainwashing skills. Miss Miller, is this your first time dating? I advise you not to listen to him too much." Heidi was completely furious now. Her face was red with anger. "What's wrong with me having my first love? It's you who have had too many and have impure thoughts. Your heart is black and you see everyone as black." Grayson couldn't help but sneer, better than being fooled and paying someone else after being sold. "You." "Oh, Teacher Larson, Heidi." Kira looked helplessly at the two of them, wondering how they started quarreling. Heidi's face was red with anger, while Grayson sat calmly inside, smiling faintly. His expression was playful and it was easy to make people angry. Fortunately, Heidi glanced at Kira on the side, giving her a face-saving expression and began to eat her food forcefully, ignoring Grayson. Richard also glanced at Kira on the side and gave her a clear white eye. Kira saw it but didn't care. She just ate her food and quickly thanked Grayson. "Teacher Larson, thank you for everything. After acquiring our company, the company has decided to give me the project of the universe." She showed a bright smile. Grayson glanced at his friend on the side and said, "It's nothing. Your talent is recognized by others and it has nothing to do with me. Teacher Larson, you are really a good person and you are so humble. People like you deserve to be rich and famous." Kira's eyes sparkled with admiration. Grayson felt the sudden chill from the man next to him and suddenly choked, coughing violently. "Deserve to be rich and famous?" He expressed his confusion about her words. Kira said, "Oh, this is a compliment, meaning that you should have money." "Oh, kids these days they don't talk like us, right, Richard?" Richard ate his food and spoke coldly, "Nonsense." Kira glared at him fiercely, "This is a generation gap." Richard finally looked at her. "Well, I hope your design doesn't have a generation gap with me. After all, I am your client now. If your design cannot please me, the opportunity Grayson gave you will only be wasted by you." Kira choked. Was he threatening her? "Don't worry, I will do my best in my professional field. I am not a person who sacrifices public interest for personal gain, nor am I a person who cannot distinguish between public and private interests." His eyebrows furrowed. "Are you implying that I am a person who sacrifices public interest for personal gain? You can rest assured that I am just strict in my company's design requirements. If you cannot meet my requirements, it just means that your ability is not enough." "You." Kira gritted her teeth silently, but also made up her mind that she must do well this time. She wouldn't let this guy look down on her. After they left, Heidi still looked unhappy. Richard left directly and Heidi looked at their backs and cursed Kira. No wonder they say birds of a feather flock together. They can be friends because they are not good people. Kira could only look at Heidi silently. As for Richard, he really wasn't a good person, but Grayson was still a good person, right? Kira had to continue working on her designs from today onwards. She had worked late into the night and returned to her room to continue working. When Richard came out, he saw Kira sleeping on the table with a pen still in her hand. As he approached her, he heard her muttering, "Bad guy, I will definitely do it well." Richard's eyes flickered. Was she cursing him? He walked over, intending to wake her up and question her, but upon seeing her sleeping face, he let out a sigh and picked her up, placing her back on the bed. Kira murmured and turned over but didn't wake up. As Richard lowered his head, he noticed the faint marks on her neck that still hadn't faded away. They were like tiny green flowers sticking to her tender white skin. Before he could react, his hand had already reached out to touch them. Kira woke up suddenly, feeling someone touching her, and was scared out of her wits. She looked up and met Richard's dark eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked. Hearing her voice, Richard suddenly came to his senses. He looked at her frightened expression and his eyes dimmed. "What am I doing?" he snorted, sarcastically adding, "You can rest assured that I won't touch you. You, a woman who still carries someone else's child, are too dirty for me." Her heart sank and she bit her lip in anger. "It's not like you haven't touched me before. You talk so nicely, but you're a hypocrite." His pale face turned angry and his dark eyes glared at her. "I think you're asking for trouble." She quickly backed away. "What are you going to do?" "If you touch me again, I'll call my grandmother." His eyes flashed and he grabbed her phone, throwing it to the ground. "Ah, you." Richard stepped on it without hesitation. Kira widened her eyes. Then he pressed her down and held her there. "Call whoever you want. Let's see how you're going to do it." His tone was condescending, as if he was humiliated. Kira blushed and felt the rough fingertips rubbing against her lips. Suddenly, the feeling from that night came back, making her tremble. He pushed her away fiercely and walked out. Kira leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, cursing him in her heart. The next morning, a brand new phone was placed on the table beside her. She bit her lip and looked at it. Even though it was new, it was not the same as before. She went to the company and soon President Jenkins said, "Today, we're all going to Cosmos Group for the first meeting." Kira and Yesenia took the company car to the Universal building with Kira's design in hand. Yesenia couldn't help but marvel at the sight of the building. No wonder it's a big company. Is this whole building owned by Richard? It must cost a fortune. Kira bit her lip, feeling a bit uneasy at the mention of Richard's name. As they entered the building, they were stopped by someone at the door. "Kira? Yesenia? What a joke. What are you doing here at Universal?" It was their former classmate, Kiana. Yesenia greeted her. "Hi, Kiana. It's really you. I heard you got into Universal. Congratulations." Kiana pushed them away. "I'm asking you too. Who allowed you to come into the company? No outsiders are allowed here. Are you here to look for a job? Security, get these two out of here." Yesenia looked incredulous. "What are you doing?" "We're here to meet as cooperating companies, not to look for a job." "Cooperating companies?" Kiana looked at Kira skeptically. "I remember seeing in the news that you were fired for plagiarism. How could you still be here?" Kira hesitated for a moment. "The fact that I'm still here means that the plagiarism incident never happened." "I don't believe you. You two sneaking into Juan, you must have some ulterior motive," Kiana said in a low voice. "Everyone in the class knows that Erica won a design award and that you plagiarized her work. She must have had a reason to accuse you." Kira frowned. "When did you become so close to Erica? What did you say?" Kiana pointed at Kira angrily. "What else can I do? Hang out with someone like you who plagiarizes? Security, what are you waiting for? Kick them out." The security guards from Juan Yu came in as expected. "Are these two the ones?" the guard asked sternly. "You need to leave if you don't have any identification." Kira said, "Uncle Security, we really are cooperating companies. We're from Qingyu Group. Where are your identification cards?" "If you don't have them, you have to leave," the guard said expressionlessly. Kiana sneered. "You don't have any, do you? Do you know how many people try to get into Juan Yu every day with all sorts of excuses? It's just you guys." Yesenia is getting anxious. Oh, the work permit is with President Jenkins. Why hasn't he come yet? Okay, stop making excuses. Security, hurry up and get them out of here. They're affecting our work, Kiana said. Kiana, can you afford to treat cooperating companies like this? Kira said sternly. But Kiana didn't care. It's just a small company. What does it matter to Huanyu? Do you really think you're still the Griffin family's miss? How dare you act so arrogantly in front of me? The security guard came forward again. Kira could only pull Yesenia and say, let's go out first. She was pregnant and didn't dare to confront anyone easily, otherwise she wouldn't have compromised so easily. Seeing that she was about to leave, Kiana smiled triumphantly and was about to go back, but she didn't expect a black figure to suddenly appear behind her. President Duncan is here. Kiana was stunned and quickly lowered her head, standing obediently there, looking at the person who came in from behind with awe. Kira and Yesenia also stopped at the same time. Richard, surrounded by a group of high-level executives, walked into the office of the project department without looking around, as if he didn't know Kira. Everyone in the office stood up busy and saluted respectfully over there. Richard seemed to notice the commotion here, and his gaze turned over with detachment. Seeing Kira and Yesenia standing on the side, he frowned. What's going on? Kira quickly raised her head and said, person who came in from behind with awe. Kira and Yesenia also stopped at the same time. Richard, surrounded by a group of high-level executives, walked into the office of the project department without looking around, as if he didn't know Kira. Everyone in the office stood up busy and saluted respectfully over there. Richard seemed to notice the commotion here, and his gaze turned over with detachment. Seeing Kira and Yesenia standing on the side, he frowned. What's going on? Kira quickly raised her head and said, President Duncan, we are employees of Qingyu. We came to meet and hand over, but your people said we don't have work permits and wouldn't let us in. You. Kiana didn't expect Kira to be so bold as to complain to Richard. Her face changed, but Kira really didn't understand Richard. President Duncan was not someone who liked people to complain, let alone someone who liked to deal with these trivial matters. She sneered at Kira, who was being clever. Richard's gaze swept over Kira's stubborn face. Elijah, go take a look. Kiana couldn't help but freeze. How could Richard call for Assistant Hayes? Elijah gave Kiana a cold glance and walked over. What's going on here? This is an employee of Qingyu. You're driving away our business partner like this. It's a big stain on the company's image. The security guards trembled in fear and quickly lowered their heads. We were wrong, Assistant Hayes. We won't do it again. Please spare us. It was all her idea. Elijah looked over at Kiana, who was standing to the side. Kiana's face changed several times and she quickly said, Assistant Hayes, I know this person. She plagiarized someone else's work. I don't think she deserves to be in Qingyu, so I had her kicked out. Elijah sneered, Since when did you become the decision maker for Qingyu? Kiana's legs went weak. That's not what I meant. Elijah looked at the two girls and spoke in a gentle tone, Please come in. Kira gave Elijah a grateful look, while Kiana looked at her with envy and disbelief. Richard looked over and said calmly, Since everyone is here, go take a look at the meeting with Qingyu. Kiana felt even more indignant. How could Kira be so lucky? President Duncan actually personally inquired about such a small project? President Jenkins arrived only after everyone had entered the meeting room. What's going on? Lu Yanming was a little puzzled as he watched the two people still standing at the door, and the project department had been watching them all along. Yesenia finally came back to her senses from her shock just now. Wow, President Jenkins, do you know that President Duncan just came and someone is targeting us, asking us to leave the company? President Duncan helped us. President Duncan? Richard. President Jenkins looked incredulous. Yes, President Duncan is so handsome. Too handsome. He also said he wants to come to the meeting room to listen to our meeting. President Jenkins looked nervous. Everyone, please behave well later. After speaking, he quickly led the team into the meeting room. Richard sat in the middle of the meeting room like an emperor. He looked at everyone expressionlessly, exuding an aura of power without anger. Kira bit her lip and sat on the side, listening as everyone arrived. Only then did Elijah smile and say, "Let's begin." Richard looked at Kira and said, "You can report to me." Everyone's gaze turned to Kira. This person is definitely doing this on purpose. As Kira looked at his indifferent and distant gaze, she gritted her teeth and took out her computer, standing at the forefront and starting her report. Richard just looked at her coldly. The meeting room was silent until the end of the report, which showed how powerful Richard's pressure was. Kira finished and said, "President Duncan, that's what I wanted to say today." Richard glanced at her and said, "It's good." This evaluation made Lu Yenming breathe a sigh of relief, but it made Kiana even more jealous. To get Richard to say good was such an honor. "But there is still room for improvement, keep working on it," he said, and then decisively walked out. As the pure black figure disappeared, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. At this point, Kiana raised her head in anger and said, "Kira, you're really bold. Are you trying to attract President Duncan's attention in this way? Unfortunately, you're wasting your time. President Duncan doesn't like people like you. I'll be in charge of our cooperation from now on. Just wait and see." She walked past Kira on purpose, brushing against her. Yesenia looked at Kira with disdain, then admiration. "Kira, you're so amazing. You did so well in front of President Duncan. If it were me, I would have been scared out of my wits if I were called on." Kira was taken aback and felt guilty. Actually, when I looked at him, I told myself that he was just a stone, so I wasn't so nervous. Kira met with him every day, so she was naturally not nervous. But she couldn't say that to Yesenia. Meanwhile, Kiana called Erica and deliberately told her about the incident. Erica was very angry. Kira went to Huanyu and met with Richard. This was her chance. At this moment, Dylan walked in. She quickly hung up the phone and looked at Dylan with red eyes. "Dylan, you're here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." She came to the Liu family company on purpose and waited for him at the door for a few hours. Dylan hesitated. "What are you doing here?" He still cared about Erica when he saw her now and just wanted to calm down for a few days. Erica hugged Dylan and cried, "I was wrong. I really was. But my dad forced me to get this project. He said that otherwise the Griffin family would be even worse off. The Griffin family is already in a bad state. If we don't get this project, I really don't know what will happen. I'm scared, so I had to agree to my dad. After all, I just came back from outside. I'm afraid that if I don't agree, my dad will think that I'm not close enough to him. I don't want to disappoint them." Looking at Erica's tearful face, Dylan softened. Erica continued, "Are you going to ignore me from now on? I know you might hate me for this, but I can't bear it without explaining to you. Okay, you can continue working now. Remember to eat well. I gave the stomach medicine to Secretary Chin. If you have a stomachache, remember to take it. Don't stay up too late at night without me taking care of you." After speaking, she seemed to have made up her mind and turned to run away. "Erica." He quickly hugged her. "Don't be like this. I didn't say I won't talk to you." Erica turned around, looking at him with surprise, and hugged Dylan movably. But in a place where he couldn't see, she showed a face of resentment. "Damn, Kira, it's all your fault." Kira left the company. Elijah walked into the office. "Sir, Miss has left." "Don't call her Mississippi." Elijah was speechless. He had just gotten used to calling her Miss, and now what? At this moment, Gu Zhanqing walked in. "I heard that you went to see Kira for a report." Richard frowned. "Why are you so free? What are you doing here?" Showed a face of resentment. "Damn, Kira, it's all your fault." Kira left the company. Elijah walked into the office. "Sir, Miss has left." "Don't call her Mississippi." Elijah was speechless. He had just gotten used to calling her Miss, and now what? At this moment, Gu Zhanqing walked in. "I heard that you went to see Kira for a report." Richard frowned. "Why are you so free? What are you doing here?" Grayson had a smile on his face. "Are you interested in her? But if you like her, you should tell her. Why do you always do good things behind her back and leave me with a good reputation? Aren't you afraid that she falls in love with me?" Richard looked at him with a gloomy expression. "Don't have any ideas about her." Grayson laughed. "See, you care so much, why pretend?" Richard's lips moved. "She has someone she likes." "Ah? Who?"